Hello, everyone, and welcome to ITLS Academy Empower the Youth. So, today in this lecture, we will going to study about bacterial agent of foodborne illness. We have already discussed about this foodborne illness, that how this foodborne illness occurs and what are the major cause of these foodborne illness. So, today we will going to study about bacterial agent of foodborne illness, how bacterial agent causes food poisoning or foodborne illness in humans. And let's see the introduction part. Bacterial foodborne infections occur when food that is contaminated with bacteria is eaten and the bacteria continues to grow in their intestine, setting up the infection which causes illness. So this type of bacterial foodborne infection occurs whenever the food is contaminated with bacteria, and that contaminated food is eaten by the human beings, and the bacteria when it get into the body of the human, they start growing continuously, growing in the intestine. So whenever they grow in the intestine, they set up the infection that cause illness. So there are various type of bacterial agent that causes infection. The first is salmonella, second is campylobacter, hemorrhage, E. coli and Listeria. So these are the major agent, or you can say major agent of bacteria that causes infection and that causes foodborne illness. So the food intoxication result from the consumption of toxins that are produced in food by bacterial growth. So toxins, not bacteria, causes illness. Toxin may not alter the appearance, odor, flavor of food. Common kinds of bacteria that produces toxins include Staphylococcus aureus and Clostridium botulinum. So this food intoxication, it result from the consumption of toxins is a sort of a poisons. Okay, they are produced in the food by bacterial growth, because you have already consumed a food that is contaminated by the bacteria, and now bacteria have that environment, means have that environment where bacteria is getting enough food and water for their survival, so they start growing themselves. So toxins, not bacteria, they causes illness. Toxin may not alter, means that the presence of toxins, they do not alter the appearance, odor or the flavor of the food. Common kinds of bacteria that produces toxins include the Staphylococcus aureus and Clostridium botulinum. So in case of Clostridium preferens, illness is caused by toxins released in the gut when large number of vegetative cells are eaten. Now let's discuss the first bacterial agent, that is salmonella. So salmonellosis is a form of food infection that may result when food containing salmonella bacteria are consumed. So the first is salmonellosis. So salmonellosis, it is a type of food infection that is largely caused by the presence of the food that is contaminated, or consumed by the food that is contaminated with the bacteria known as salmonella. The salmonella family include more than 2300 stereotype but two type salmonella enteroides and salmonella type murium are most common in US and account for half of the infection. So salmonella species, there are 23 species, 2300 species that or you can say stereotype of salmonella that are known till date. And but basically both two species, that is salmonella enteroides and salmonella typhimurium, they are most common found in US, and they account for half of the infections in the US. So once eaten, the bacteria may continue to live in the intestine, set up infection and causes illness. So once you eat or consume the contaminated food that has salmonella on in it in themselves, so that food when consumed by the human, so those type of bacteria, that is salmonella bacteria, lives and grow in the intestine of the human. They set up infection and causes illness. The possibility and severity of illness depends in the large part of the size of the dose. Resistance of the host and a specific strain of salmonella causes illness. So what is the severity, whether the symptoms are mild or whether the symptoms are chronic, depend upon the dose, means the amount of salmonella is there in your intestine. Whenever you consume only a one bite of a contaminated food, so maybe the symptom is not so chronic as when you consume a large amount of food that contains the contaminated salmonella. So possibility of severity of illness, it depends upon the large part on the sizes of the dose. So the resistance of the host and specific strain of salmonella causes the illness. Now the question arises that how salmonella bacteria they are spread. So salmonella bacteria, they are spread through direct or indirect contact within the intestinal content or excrement of animals including human. So basically salmonella bacteria, they are spread through direct or indirect contact with the intestinal content, means of course through intestine they came into the in intestine they grow and multiply. So salmonella bacteria, they are spread through direct and indirect contact with the intestinal content. For example, they may be spread to body by hands that are not washed after using the toilet. They may also be spread to a raw meat during processing that it is contaminated when brought into the kitchen. So these are certain examples, means when you have used the toilet, and after using the toilet if you have not washed your hands, so they can spread wash the hand, and you just uses and you just start eating the food, so they can spread to the food, and after spreading to the food they can get easily entry inside our body. Even after even it is an important to look that if raw meat means raw meat during the processing, it if it get contaminated, and if not preventive measure has taken to remove that contamination, then and if this raw meat is consumed by the people, then it may also causes salmonella to spread. So because of this, it is important to take to make sure hands and working surface are thoroughly washed after contact with raw fish, poultry, meat, and before working with food that require no further cooking. So you should always make sure your environment should be free from any source of contamination. You should always wash your hand before handling any food. You should always wash your hands before consuming any food. Whenever you are handling a food that is not further need cooking, so you should always handle the food with a very appropriate manners, like manners in the sense means you should always use the food while washing your hands, or you should always sanitize the hand before using or coming in contact with that particular food. Now comes the salmonella bacteria. They grow between the temperature of 41 to 103 degree Fahrenheit. So the growth temperature or the growing temperature of salmonella species is between 41 to 103 11 13 degrees centigrades, and they are readily destroyed by cooking, means they do not destroy by cooking to 160 Fahrenheit, and do not grow at refrigerator or freezer temperature. So they do not destroy by cooking at a temperature of 160 Fahrenheit, but the studies have shown that they do not grow at refrigerator or freezer temperature. So they do not survive in refrigerator or freezing. However, they will begin to grow again once warmed to the room temperature. So their freezing, they do not causes any spoilage at the freezing or in the refrigerator, but once that food is taken out from the refrigerator, and once the food is stored at the room temperature, they start growing themselves again. What are the symptoms of salmonellosis? So salmonellosis, as already discussed, it is a disease or an infection that is caused by salmonella species. So the symptoms of salmonellosis includes headache, diarrhea, abdominal cramp, nausea, chill, fever and vomiting. So salmonellosis include headache, diarrhea, abdominal pain, nausea, chills, fever, and vomiting. So these occur within 8 to 72 hours after eating the contaminated food, and it may leads to 4 days to 7 days. Sometimes it is mild, so it lasts for 4 days, but once it gets chronic, so it takes even the weeks also to get fit after eating the antibiotics. So the symptoms occur within 8 to 72 hours. Infant, young children, pregnant women, and elderly peoples or people that are already ill have least resistance to disease effects. So they generally affect the elderly people or infant. Now comes the food that are commonly involved include eggs, any egg based food, salad, poultry, beef, pork, processed meat pies, fish, cream, dessert, fillings, sandwiches, filling, raw sprouts, milk products. So these foods may be contaminated at any of point of many points where the food is handled or processed from the time of slaughter to harvest until it is eaten. So these type of foods like poultry, meat, even the dairy products, so at any stages the you can say the this foodborne diseases or contamination can be occur, because if there is not proper handling of the food, then of course the this contamination could occur. And is that is the reason it is always recommended to handle the food with the full safety, with full hygienic conditions, so that there should be no point of spoilage. So it is always recommended to use or handle the food in a very hygienic environment. And even when yes, now comes to the campylobacteriosis. Now comes the campylobacteriosis. So this campylobacteriosis or campylobacter enteries, these are caused by consuming a food or a water contaminated with a bacteria known as Campylobacter jejuni. So this type of bacteria is commonly found in the intestinal tract of a healthy animal, especially chicken, and in untreated surface water. So as we have discussed in salmonella, so salmonellosis, it is caused by salmonella species. So here campylobacteriosis, it is caused by consuming food or water that has a bacteria known as Campylobacter jejuni, and it is basically these type of contamination is found in the intestinal tract of the healthy animal, especially in chicken. And also it is present in a water that is not treated, means the dirty water, or you can say the slime water. So the raw and inadequate cooking food of animal origin and non chlorinated water are the most common source of human infections. Example: raw milk, uncooked chicken, raw hamburger, raw shellfish. So these organisms grow best in reduced oxygen environment. It is easily killed at by heating at 120 Fahrenheit, 1 degree centigrade Fahrenheit, and it inhibited by acid salt drying and will not multiply at a temperature below 85-degree Fahrenheit. So one thing is with this bacteria, that this bacteria, it is mainly present on the surface of the raw food, means the food that is not cooked properly, means you can say uncooked food, and it is mainly present in the non chlorinated water. So these are the most important source of infections in human. For example, raw milk. These type of bacteria are present in the raw milk, even the raw hamburger, raw uncooked chicken. So but there is one thing best about this, means this type of bacteria, they generally best grow in the reduced environment, and the best thing is that they can easily killed at a temperature of 120 degree Fahrenheit. Means these type of bacteria, they do not need oxygen for the growth, but they inhibit or killed at a temperature of 1 degree 120 Fahrenheit. And at and also they are inhibited at by adding acid, by adding salt or drying, or even they do not multiply below the temperature of 85 degrees centigrade. That is the reason it is always recommended to pasteurize the milk, or means you can say the boil the milk, so that these type of bacteria can easily inhibit or killed. Then comes the what are the symptoms of campylobacteriosis. So the symptoms are diarrhea, nausea, abdominal cramp, muscle pain, headache, fever. These are certain common symptoms. Onset usually occur 2 to 10 days after eating the contaminated food. So these are the certain types of symptoms that are occur, like diarrhea, and abdominal cramp, muscle pain, headache, fever. And the symptoms usually occur after 1 to 2 days, or in between 2 to 10 days after eating the contaminated food, because even the microorganisms also need certain time to grow and multiply and अपने symptoms देने के लिए. And then the duration is 2 to 7 days, but it can be weak with such complication as urinary tract infection and reactive arthritis. Meningitis, recurrent chloritis, acute chlorosis, and Bleuler syndromes are the rare complication. Death are also rare, has been reported. Means this is not so severe as compared to the Salmonella species, but still the symptoms last for 2 or 3 weeks, and it is always recommended to always eat fresh food, always consume a food that is properly killed. Do not consume a raw milk, because of course it has lots of bacteria. Then comes the preventive measure of campylobacter. So what are the preventive measures? So if we see the preventive measures of campylobacter, then preventive measure of campylobacter infections, it includes the pasteurizing milk, avoiding post pasteurization contamination, cooking raw meat, cooking the raw meat, poultry, fish, and preventing the cross contamination between the raw and cooked or ready to eat food. So it is always recommended, whenever you are using any dairy product, especially milk, you should always pasteurize that milk. You should always boil the milk. Whenever you are consuming any raw meat, you should always properly wash it before using. You should always properly cook it. You should always add certain types of spices to prevent any spoilage. And of course, means you should always prevent the cross contamination. A person who is handling the food, that must be the place should be properly hygiene. And of course the person should be wearing enough hygienic clothes, so that there should be no cross contamination. So whenever we are studying any type of foodborne illness, the basic aim or the basic preventive measure a person can take is to make an environment that is so hygienic. Means you should always handle the food very properly, so that there should be no cross contamination. So that's bring to the end of the lecture. Hope you have understood the lecture. If any queries, any doubt related to the lecture, you can simply leave your queries in the comment section below. In the next lecture I'll be answering the queries. Thank you students, thank you for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe ITLS Academy. Thank you.